Hey everybody, happy Saturday. I hope you've got a lovely weekend lined up ahead of you. So I was going to do some content today about toxic people and what a toxic person is. And unfortunately, there's many of these types of people out there, and so you've probably encountered one at some point, and that's probably why you're watching this video now. A toxic person is typically quite an unself-aware person. They may not always know what they're doing. They certainly aren't aware of how their behaviours are impacting others, and they certainly won't be trying to change how their behaviours impact others. Now, that doesn't mean just because they're unself-aware that it's okay. That is their level of awareness, and actually what would help is if they did a little bit of an inner inventory and made some changes to their habits and behaviours and way of acting, which will be better for their life as well as other people. So we know when we're around toxic people when something just doesn't feel right, something feels off. We can often find that we're confused around them. So typically gaslighting behavior is where somebody's acting in a certain way that is causing harm to others, but then making others think that it's down to them, that it's something they're doing. It causes confusion in the mind, like, actually, is it my fault? Is it really? You know, self-doubt. Toxic people, their behaviors can be very damaging to others around them. And if somebody comes forward to that toxic person and explains that, you know, how you're behaving is really affecting me, unfortunately, there's likely to be little change. So that toxic person won't really be able to see from your point of view where you're coming from. It might be that they're actually completely unable to see from your point of view, or they're choosing not to, one or the other. Toxic people will struggle to apologise is another common trait. They may do a lot to resist accountability and responsibility for their actions, and they will often project their own behaviours onto others. So it's not that actually they need to be accountable and apologise for how they might have hurt somebody. It's actually that it's that person's fault that it happened to them. Toxic people, there's a lot of work needed for toxic behaviours to change. Now, I'm not saying that all toxic people are bad. I've certainly had toxic behaviours in the past that I couldn't see for years, for love nor money, until, you know, the cycles kept repeating. And in the end, I had to take ownership of how my behaviours may have been impacting other people, and take a good look at how those behaviours are impacting my life. And then on top of that, look back to why I had learnt those ways of being. It is reversible, but there's toxicity and there's toxicity, and that's across a spectrum. So it's not that we need to be anti-toxic people and it's the new big word out there. But it is a thing, it's a real thing, and it does cause damage. It causes a lot of personal damage to people. It destroys self-esteem, it destroys people's lives, it destroys people's connections to each other. It damages relationships. How do we get toxic people to look at the stuff? We might not be able to, because quite a lot of the stuff that goes on with toxic people is they're not aware, they're completely not aware of what they're doing, they just cannot see it, or they're choosing not to. So how do you lead a horse to water with that? You can't. But the thing is, really, if you are recognizing there's toxicity, there is help out there. So it's more about not changing them, it's what you want to do with your life if you're around a toxic person. And we might have toxic people in employment, in our jobs, we might have them in our family, we might have them in relationships, we might have them in friends. It's not all that easy to change up when it's those closely linked. However, it is about who am I allowing into my life, and why am I allowing this to continue, no matter who they are. You know, toxicity is toxicity. It's someone else's behaviours and traits and habits that are impacting you. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't feel good, that's good enough. You've always got a choice. There is always choices to be made there to leave. However, it's not always that black and white. And maybe you're watching this and thinking that maybe you've got some traits of toxicity. And actually, if you're actually even thinking that, that's great, because it means that you're on board with taking a look at some of your habits and behaviours. And you can always look up online signs of a toxic person. And it might be that you have one or two traits. And it might be that you have 10. It's a bit like narcissism. That's the big word that's bandied around at the moment. Actually, in order to be a narcissist, you actually have to have a certain number of traits of narcissism, not just one or two. Because we all have one or two traits of narcissism, and we have natural narcissism in childhood. So it's about kind of going about this stuff with kids' gloves, with compassion, certainly to self if you're feeling that you're being exposed to a toxic person, because it can be crippling. But it's knowing that you can make choices for your life. You don't have to be around toxicity. And if you're struggling to know how to make changes with that, reach out. So you can look on my website, www.holisticsue.com, for more of what I do. But don't struggle alone. And it's okay to have the odd toxic trait or two. It's what you do with it that counts. Have a good weekend.